From A Color Story, please welcome Trey George.
Anyway, my name is Trey George, CEO of Color Story. For those who don't know, it's a photo and video app company that's based right here in Springfield, Missouri, that we have users all over the world, and it's really pretty amazing what you can do in this town. I mean, this event in and of itself kind of speaks to that. This is pretty cool what's going on. But what A Color Story does is we make apps they do like photo filters or photo effects or video editing or to add design and layout. Functionally, what we do is we make apps to make your Instagram look cool. That's kind of the gist of what we do. But a little bit of history on where we came from, how we started. We're actually a pretty young company. We started back in 2016 as a spin-off of A Beautiful Mess. And for those who don't know, that's a women's lifestyle blog that's based right here in Springfield, Missouri as well. It gets about 1 million hits a month. We dabbled in apps a little bit under A Beautiful Mess, but we decided we wanted to incorporate it into its own company. And so A Color Story was our first, I guess, step in that direction. So that's our flagship app that we launched back in 2016. So little recap of the timeline. 2016 we launched. We're profitable that first year, which was awesome for us. By 2017, we are actually able to pay ourselves back the entire initial investment. Again, very proud of that. And then by 2018, like I said, we launched as a spinoff of A Beautiful Mess, but that was the year that we actually outgrew them, which was really cool for us. Also the year that we launched a design kit, which is a little design companion app to A Color Story. And then this last year, we launched 2 apps with a partner out of England named Zoe Sugg. She's a YouTuber. She's wonderful. And then we've just had exponential growth over these last 4 years. It's been really cool. We're very, very proud of it. But I don't say all that just to like brag about all the cool stuff we did, though I am very proud of it. We did this on very limited resources, very limited expertise. We are truly bootstrapped. We're a cash flow business. If we don't have money, we go out of business. So this wasn't as easy as it seems in some of the movies where they're able to raise all this venture funding and you're able to fall back on that cushion and you can scale up these enormous teams. We had to make a bunch of very small decisions, a bunch of small steps. We hired very conservatively. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that process looked like for us and then some of our learnings along the way, where maybe if that's something in your heart or something you're thinking about doing, that you've got some big idea that seems a little too scary to go after, we can show you what it's like. So first, the idea. I think a lot of times we think our idea has to be this huge thing that changes the world. But that can get really, really expensive really, really fast. And what we've found works the best is to start niche and then expand, especially if you're like us and you've got limited resources. That was our whole strategy. So we found our target, we found this niche, and then we catered exactly to that and then went beyond that. The way the idea came up for A Color Story, because A Color Story is functionally a photo filter app. Like that's what it does. Like you've all heard of photo filter apps before. There's a ton of them in the App Store. So it was a very competitive and saturated market, so we had to find some way to carve out our point of difference. The way the idea came to be was Elsie and Emma, who are the founders of A Beautiful Mess, they noticed this whole corner of the internet that had this one specific style of editing. And it just wasn't really represented in other photo filter apps. It was more bright, it was more saturated, had a little bit richer contrast to it. There was just something going on. When we talked to the people who were doing it, we'd ask them, hey, how are you doing this? They'd talk about stacking 4 or 5 apps, or maybe they're doing it in Photoshop and then importing it to their phone, taking all these steps. So it's a whole process. So for us, we're like, what if we just do an app that focuses on that? And so what that means tangibly is this. And I know that to a lot of you, this isn't supposed to wow you. No one's going to look at this and be like, oh my God, look how much kind of brighter that photo up top looks. Doesn't matter to a lot of people. And honestly, it made it pretty hard to explain to people that were outside of our niche. My dad did not get it. He still doesn't really know what I do. But he's great. He's great. But but whenever we showed this to the people that we were targeting, to that group that really wanted it, it worked. It worked so well we were able to launch our entire app business off of this, like off this difference here. It does other things, and then over time, we expanded. We didn't stop at that. We didn't just do that and say, all right, we're done, here we go. You know, we have over 400 filters now. We probably have a filter that looks just like this one on the bottom now, if I'm being honest with you. I almost did pull another filter from a color story just from laziness, but that is from a competitor, so it's different. Anyway, so we did expand over time, both aesthetically and technologically. Like I said, now we've got 4 apps. We do a whole host of things that we didn't do right out of the gate. Out of the gate, very limited funding, so we worked with what we had. And that was how the idea came to be. The next thing is how we did it, because there's a million ideas out there, and I, working in apps, I get a lot of people pitching them to me. But no idea is very valuable, or an idea is nothing without execution, and so how do you go about doing it? Like I said, we dabbled in apps a little bit, but I'm a philosophy major. So I worked in marketing for, a few years prior to working for A Beautiful Mess. I don't have a very technical background. I think the only coding I ever did was in 2006 to style my MySpace page. So I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm not a designer really either. I don't have the expertise to do an app. So again, that was a very, very kind introduction they gave me, but I did not build this app by myself. We brought in very talented people to do it. But at first, what that meant was contractors. For the first year of A Color Story, it was just me and contractors. And I knew, again, I would know a little bit, and then I would know a little bit more, and then a little bit more as I asked more and more questions, and we figured things out. It's funny, when I was a kid, trial and error, I thought that wasn't, I didn't think you did that anymore when you were an adult. I didn't think you, I thought you were supposed to know how stuff worked. I thought that was it. I didn't know you could still fail your way into success. But that's exactly what we did. We made so many mistakes along the way. We're literally dealing with a bug right now in the app. It doesn't stop. It's a tricky thing. But we figured it out little by little. Like I said, first year, just me and a contractor. The way I even found him was just through a ton of Google searches. It wasn't like, oh, I know the smart way to do this and I have all these great connections to this. No, I was searching the App Store. I found an app that was pretty well built but not successful enough to pay anybody's bills. And so I just reached out and like, hey, do you want to make another app? And he's like, yeah, sure. That's a guy named Matt out of England. So yeah, it was just me and him. And me, I was full-time, but Matt was just doing this in his spare time. He had a full-time job. We got like 5 to 10 hours a week out of him. And that's how we built A Color Story. We just started with what we had, the limited knowledge that we had, and again, I cannot reiterate the mistakes. When we launched, we had an awesome launch. Apple took notice of us and they wanted to feature us. And this is launching A Color Story, the photo app, and they're like, hey, we want to feature your app, but your camera doesn't work. Let me say that back to you. This is a photo editing app. And the camera didn't work. This is a button on the home screen. And it just didn't work. There's a handful of technical reasons why that happened and how it got past all of our testing, which I thought was good, but apparently not that good. But we got it done. We got it taken care of. Added that to the list of things that were like, okay, don't mess that up again. And then we put out another update, messed up something else, and then we added that to the list of things not to mess up, and now we've got ourselves in a pretty good groove. We don't make the same mistakes we used to make, but we still make them. And we learn from them every time. And basically, my goal has never been to be the expert of apps. It's always been just to know a little bit more today than I did yesterday. And if I do that, then it seems to be okay. And again, smarter people, experts in the field won't have made the same mistakes as me, but I can also say you can still find success even if you're completely in over your head. And again, execution, I could get into the weeds of exactly how all this came to life, but for the most part, it really was just searching things. There's so much information available to us. We have fantastic resources even in this town. There's so much talent that you can pull together to make this happen. If you don't know how to do it, you can find someone who does. And again, it's just a Google search away. I find myself doing that constantly. Even whether it's finding our first contractor, whether it's figuring out what my first full-time hire should be, or what an org chart looks like, or how I should, I don't know, scale a development process. I don't really understand a lot of the words that I'm using, but I just go for it. And so it just happens. But just like any idea is useless without an execution is useless without customers. So we had to scale this up. A common misconception for those who are pretty familiar with our business, and specifically Beautiful Mess, is that we basically oh, cool, well, I wish I had a blog that got 1 million hits, then yeah, I could launch a product too. And yeah, the misconception then is that we have this blog that it functions as the entirety of our marketing, and then we don't have to do anything else. And the truth is that got us a launch, and then not much more. It's been good as a support, but we got this giant spike, and then it quickly started to drop off. And it's just because basically we hit that audience, but now we needed another audience. And so if we didn't find a way to scale, we were dead in the water. Again, A Beautiful Mess is wonderful, and they've been fantastic partners to us. But if we tried to rely on that alone, there's just no way we could have made it, and there's no way we'd be where we are now. So what I landed on, just what we learned, was trying to find the undervalued marketing tactic. So we all know about established marketing tactics. If you were to start spouting off the various types of things you should do when it comes to marketing, there's a few that are obvious, but the problem is that a lot of the more established marketing tactics out there are just not priced for startups. They just aren't, especially if you're dealing with your own money. ROI is not just a thing we say in meetings, like return on investment. If we didn't return on our investment, we die. We're done. It doesn't have, every dollar had to count. And so whenever we would start spending against something, if that money didn't immediately come back, we were screwed. So for us, that meant two tactics. One was influencer partnerships, which I'll talk a little bit more about when I talk about partnerships. And then the second piece was Instagram ads. And I know that sounds obvious at this point, but in 2016, it was a relatively new product. There weren't as many, it wasn't nearly as saturated, and so impressions were a lot cheaper to get. It also was a directly relevant tactic to what we were doing. We were making an app for your Instagram. It's great if we can advertise right on Instagram. And so we did all the upfront work to make it look good, we did all the upfront work to find that tactic that would return, so then we didn't have to invest as much in the creative side of it. Because I don't know if you've ever dealt with trying to come up with creative. It can get really expensive really fast. I've managed projects that, with $40,000 photo shoots, and that breaks our budget. There's no way we could do that. I mean, we're looking to spend $10, $50, maybe $100 a day when we first start doing this. So how can we possibly afford something like that? So that was what made Instagram ads such a great tactic for us. And so another big reveal is what our ad looked like. It's just that. Nothing crazy. This is a photo, no joke, I took in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Pretty sure there's a sunburned dad, 6 beers deep, right outside the frame. But it looks nice there, doesn't it? No, it was, but this is it. This is still actually the same ad concept that we run. It cost me $0, and I made it in about 45 minutes. And so, and a better designer could have done it way faster than that, I would think. I hope. Anyway, so the point being is that you can is to be creative in identifying your tactic, not just in the creative itself. We think of creativity as limited to creative. We think of it as, it has to be art or something. It has to be art. It has to be photography, music, whatever. But creativity comes in all forms. And if you get really creative in trying to identify your tactic, trying to identify that strategy, you can find ways to scale pretty exponentially. So then our second piece of marketing that really helped us, honestly, this goes beyond just marketing. This is like partnerships, networks, and collaborations have been pivotal to the success of A Beautiful Mess and A Color Story throughout all of our company's history. We've worked with, like, whether we're just collaborating with somebody to test the app, or we're bringing them in to actually create something for us. A big growth strategy for us was to partner up with various photographers and Instagram influencers, and they would help us create filter packs or effect packs, and then we put that in there, and then it becomes this shared experience, as opposed to just the straightforward sponsorship, which was something that we had done plenty of, or something that we had a lot of experience with on A Beautiful Mess, where we were being sponsored, but we also knew the engagement that a clean sponsored post would get versus the engagement that true collaborations would get. Whenever we found ourselves working more with that sponsor, working more with that brand to actually create something, they were a lot more, the users were a lot more engaged with it. So we thought the same thing with filter packs. So rather than just paying someone to talk about the app, we paid them to help us create things for the app. We brought them in. And so that was a big strategy. Now I think we've worked with over 40 photographers at this point, like in A Color Story alone. And then from there, we're like, let's scale up, let's do more. We tried, so then we reached out to Zoe Sugg, and this was, my wife Emma's here. She so relentlessly hounded Zoe on Instagram until eventually she just replied. She's just like, no. She's like, she hasn't said a no yet, so that's something. And it was 2 years in the making. She said no quite a few times, or didn't say no. She just kind of punted us around for a little bit, and then eventually was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then we launched 2 apps with her this year. Film, we launched with her back in May. We got 100,000 installs on the first day of the launch. That's how valuable this partnership was to us, and that's what she was able to bring to the table. Then after that, we're like, well, what about celebrities? Why not? Let's just see. Our manager who's in charge of sponsorships, Joey, he knew of 2 resources. One's called Celebrity Access, and the other is just IMDb Pro. These are things that anyone can sign up for, and they give you access to agents and managers and really and email addresses, and they'll write back. They're the real email addresses, believe it or not. And we just like, I guess, let's try. A lot of them don't. We'll get silence, but Jonas Brothers was a funny one because it kind of started as a joke. We had our product manager, Rachel, is a huge Jonas Brothers fan, and we give her a lot of hell for that. And so Joey reached out to their manager just to see if we could get any response, so then he could pass that on to Rachel and be like, haha, look, I reached out to Jonas Brothers. That was going to be the extent of the bit. That's it. And they wrote back, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And we're like, okay. Yeah, totally. I feel like I was out of town, and Joey called me. He's like, hey, do you want to work with the Jonas Brothers? I was like, yes. Yes, definitely. And so, yeah, we helped launch, we were part of their marketing campaign to launch Happiness Begins, their album, this last year. And so this is another thing where I think it can feel really intimidating really fast, just like, okay, again, easy for you to say you were able to reach out to them and they wanted to talk to you. The point is that plenty of people don't want to talk to us. Plenty of people ignore us, but we just ask. We just give it a shot. Just go for it. You'd be surprised. Like I said, there's resources out there, but no joke, Instagram is how we make a lot of connections. We'll just send someone a DM, and you'd be surprised how many times people actually do check it. And if it's a good opportunity, if it's something that fits with what they want, they'll respond. They'll work with you. That's been our experience time and time again. So yeah, like I was saying, I didn't really get into any of the weeds of the technical execution of apps. If any of you want to talk to me about that, I'm more than willing to tell you the few things I do know. And you're more than welcome to email me also if you want to, if you don't like approaching strangers. It's just my name. I didn't put it up there, I should have, but it's just trey@acolorstory.com. More than welcome, reach out, ask questions. I love talking about this stuff. But the point being is, the reason why I didn't get into the technical side of it was because I didn't really know the technical side of it either when I started. And you just can kind of figure things out as you go, and you'd be surprised how effective that can be if you just don't give up. And in a town like this, where we have such amazing resources, incredibly low cost of living, and and all of the talent, like the colleges we have here are truly something special. Like some of my favorite creators are from this town, whether they're designers or developers or musicians. Like, there's so much good stuff happening in this town. There's so many resources to tap. And so of all the places where this statement is true, just make something. You can. If you've got an idea, you'll be able to figure it out. And that is all I got. Thank you.